It hadn't stopped raining for hours. On June 18th, 1815, Napoleon Bonaparte looked out over the mud of Waterloo. He was waiting for the ground to dry so he could move his cannons. That delay, just a few hours, was the gap the Duke of Wellington needed. By sunset, the man who had conquered Europe was a fugitive. This wasn't just a lost battle. It was the day the map of the world was redrawn. So, how did one of history's greatest military minds lose it all because of a little rain? Let's rewind. Just 100 days earlier, Napoleon had escaped from exile on the island of Elba. France, tired of its new king, welcomed him back with open arms. The other European powers? Not so much. They declared him an outlaw and assembled a massive Seventh Coalition army to take him down once and for all. Napoleon knew his only chance was to strike first and fast. His plan was brilliant. Hit the Allied armies in Belgium before they could fully unite. He aimed to defeat the British under the Duke of Wellington and the Prussians under Marshal Blucher separately. And at first, it worked. He drove a wedge between them, forcing Wellington to retreat to a ridge near a small village called Waterloo. This is where the weather steps in. Heavy rain turned the battlefield into a swamp. Napoleon's greatest strength was his artillery, his cannons. But in that deep mud, they were almost impossible to move. He had no choice but to wait for the ground to harden. He famously said, "This wet ground will cost us time." He had no idea how much. Wellington, meanwhile, was holding a defensive line along a ridge. He was a master of defense, and he used the terrain perfectly, hiding his troops behind the crest of the hill to protect them from French cannon fire. He knew he was outnumbered and outgunned. His entire strategy relied on one thing: holding on long enough for the Prussians to arrive. Around 11:30 a.m., Napoleon finally gave the order to attack. The French infantry marched uphill, straight into a wall of British fire. The fighting was brutal, especially around a farmhouse called Hougoumont and a fortified farm, La Haye Sainte. For hours, thousands of men threw themselves at these key defensive points. The French cavalry, led by the legendary Marshal Ney, launched charge after charge against the British infantry squares. It was a spectacular, but ultimately futile, display of courage. The British lines bent, but they didn't break. As the afternoon wore on, Napoleon started to get nervous. There was movement on the horizon. Was it his own reinforcements or something else? It was the Prussians. The delay caused by the rain had given Blucher's army just enough time to regroup and march to Wellington's aid. Realizing time was running out, Napoleon committed his last resort, the Imperial Guard. These were his elite, veteran soldiers who had never known defeat. They marched forward in a final, desperate push to break the British center. Wellington himself rode along his lines, shouting encouragement. As the guard advanced, he gave the famous command, "Now, Maitland, now's your time." Hidden British troops rose from the ground and unleashed a devastating volley of fire. For the first time ever, the Imperial Guard faltered. They stopped, and then they began to retreat. The sight of the invincible guard breaking sent a shockwave through the French army. Cries of "La Garde recule," "The guard retreats," spread like wildfire. The entire French line collapsed into a chaotic rout. The arrival of the Prussians on their flank sealed the deal. It was a total disaster for Napoleon. He fled the battlefield, his dreams of empire shattered in the mud. The Battle of Waterloo ended the Napoleonic Wars and ushered in a century of relative peace in Europe, often called the Pax Britannica. Napoleon was exiled again, this time to the remote island of St. Helena in the middle of the Atlantic, where he would die 6 years later. All because of a few hours of rain. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest events in history can turn on the smallest details. Thanks for watching. If you found this story as fascinating as I do, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into history's most pivotal moments. See you next time.